Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. I hope 2020 is treating each of you well. On this episode, we were lucky enough to catch up with Ben Furimsky, the CEO of the Fly Fishing Show, on a rare week home in Colorado during the show season. We have a chance to talk about the history of the Fly Fishing Show, the changes he's made since he's taken over as CEO and what he hopes to accomplish during his tenure, and what folks can expect from this season's shows. A few housekeeping items before we move on to the interview. If you like the podcast, please subscribe and please leave us a review in iTunes. This episode is sponsored by our friends at Norvise. Their motto is tie better flies faster, and they produce the only vise that truly spins. To see for yourself, visit www.nor-vice.com, or even better, visit with them at any of the fly fishing shows this season. Now on to our interview. Well, welcome to the Articulate Fly, Ben.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it, and we have a tradition on the Articulate Fly. I always ask all of my guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much have been fishing as far as I can remember back. I have to say some of my earliest fishing memories are fishing some local farm ponds where I lived in Pennsylvania for bluegill and sunfish and largemouth bass. I was using some spinning rods as well as push button rods and fly rods, all the above really. And I think that led to one of my favorite things is sight fishing, and I used to walk around the flats there and look for bluegills on their reds and pick out the big ones and catch those and toss them back in and move on my way.
Really neat. And I know you grew up in a fly fishing family. You know, as a young adult, did you kind of move away from the industry and come back later in life, or did you kind of always stay around the sport?
Well, I mean, staying around the sport versus it being in industry are maybe two different things a little bit. I obviously was busy in college and, getting started with all of that stuff. And, that takes up a lot of time. I was playing sports and taking an awful lot of credits, too many credits, and didn't have as much time as I would have liked. But I went to college at Penn State, and, within a few miles of my apartment, I was able to get out and do some fly fishing. So I did some of that, and I'd fish in the summertime. I've been involved in the industry pretty much the whole time in one way or another. Even through college, I commercially tied some flies.
Great. And I know that, the fly fishing show is just kind of one small part of the things you do in the industry. Can you share with our listeners some of the other things that you do? Well,
currently, I pretty much work with the Fly Fishing Show. I also own a online bookstore, theanglingbookstore.com, and I sell hunting and fishing books and DVDs and gifts. Obviously, our specialty is fly fishing, but we do the whole gamut. And, over the years, I've been a guide in both freshwater, saltwater. I've worked as a sales rep. I design flies that are commercially contracted by several companies. I've written articles. I've got a book in the works. Worked in fly shops, and a variety of just about everything except being a manufacturer. But I sort of almost did that for just a fly tying material that my dad had developed, bugskin. So we kind of manufactured that, and I represented him mostly at the shows with that product over the years.
Yeah, very neat. And we all know that the show season in the fly fishing world is generally January, February, and early March. What does your off season look like, and how do you recharge your batteries after a long show season?
Mm-hmm. Well, my dad started the Fly Fishing Show with a partner, and when I took over, his partner retired, and I kind of took over his realm. And then my dad has semi-retired. He'll never retire. He loves being around it. And, so I run the whole thing, but he continues to run the International Fly Tying Symposium that we hold in November. So we do have one event in November. It's typically the weekend before Thanksgiving, and then we start the first weekend of January and run through the first weekend of March, a couple weekends off in there. But, once we finish up a lot of people think it's kind of done and it's the off season. And yes, I do take a day or two to maybe do about nothing except sit there or try to sleep in and try to just recover, because I'm working, right now. I leave tomorrow and I don't have another day off for 3 weeks, and then I'll have a couple of days off, and then I don't have a day off for 2 weeks. And, so it's a vigorous schedule during show season, and some days I'm working 20 hours a day. So I take a couple of days to recover, and then we have some post-show work that we need to get done. And by that time, we're already starting our contracts. And in fact, I have a to-do list right here in front of me right now for 2021 stuff. So there's not really a lot of off-season to it, but I do like to get some fishing trips in, obviously, and something like that really helps recharge my batteries. I wish we could get a little more remote than we can these days, but I have Wi-Fi about everywhere now, so I'm still accessible.
No, I completely get it. And
Yeah.
and it's interesting, right? Because I understand that that what we all know as the fly fishing show today really grew out of some smaller shows that your father used to promote in Pennsylvania. Can you tell us a little bit about kind of the pre fly fishing show days?
Well, yeah, it actually started. It's hard to say exactly. My dad took fly fishing from the late great George Harvey at Penn State, and he was one of the greatest teachers that we may have ever had in our sport, and he learned a lot from him, and I learned how he does presentations and demonstrations and things like that. He also owned a business that was just a leather goods store, unrelated, but because he enjoyed the outdoor sports, he attended some outdoor sports type shows and sold leather goods at them. So he was an exhibitor at sporting shows, and at the time there were no fly fishing specific events. Then he started through working with those classes that he did with George Harvey and talking with him, he decided to start this thing called Trout Masters Weekend. And his shop was at a ski area in Pennsylvania, Seven Springs Mountain Resort. And they had some convention space and, venues there and hotel space. So he did this Trout Masters Weekend hosted there at Seven Springs, because there was also fishing available, nice setting, places for seminars, presentations, casting areas. And Lefty Cray was the host. He was the lead instructor. And he held that for a few years with a few different instructors. I think Lefty was there maybe every year, and he would have some other guys along with him that varied from year to year. Maybe Bob Klauser, I think, was there, Ed Jaborowski, a variety of different instructors. And becoming friends with Lefty during this event, Lefty talked with him, and my dad had the idea of making a little more of a consumer side to this Trout Masters Weekend, which was basically a limited class. I can't remember, maybe 20 people for the weekend, something like that. And so conversations with Lefty led to doing a small show at Seven Springs. And I can't even remember what he called that. It still might have been Trout Masters Weekend or something of the sort. It wasn't called the Fly Fishing Show yet. And it was a consumer fly fishing specific event. The first that we know of its kind, other than just some small club get-togethers, basically. And at about the same time, his partner Barry Serviente, his former partner, he was starting a small show himself, and they got wind of each other and got together. And my dad's was based on a lot of presentations and a lot of learning, starting from the Trout Masters Weekend with Lefty, and Barry's show was based a little more on the retail side because he owned a bookstore angler's art and a wholesaler, and he used it more as sort of a venue to grow customers and sell more product. So together they formed up the Fly Fishing Show and had the first one in Somerset, New Jersey, 28 years ago.
Really neat. And I mean, it's amazing that it's almost been around for 30 years. What have you seen in terms of the changes in the consumer fly fishing shows over that time period?
Yeah, it's hard to believe it's been that long. It
Yeah.
seems only like yesterday to me. Unfortunately, I missed the first event. I was actually racing skiing at the time at Penn State, and we had, I think we were at Nationals that weekend. So I missed the very first fly fishing show, unfortunately. But to answer your question, yeah, there's the biggest change. If you were to walk in the door, the biggest change, and I've talked to a lot of people about this recently, is the ease of getting a professional booth. I mean, back in those days, everybody constructed their booth in their garage. There were no booths that you could just buy online. There was no online, and there was no digital printing that was you printed on the fabric that you could just pop up in a frame and stretch around something that could go in your suitcase. People would come into the show with sheets of plywood and saws and hammers, and they'd be building their booth right there during the setup.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing when you think about how quickly people can get in and out of a expo hall these days.
Oh yeah, some of it drives me crazy. Guys come in and they pop up their booth in 15 minutes and crack open a beer, and then they just start talking to you, and you're like, I love you, man, but I got a ton of work to do, and it irritates me that you got set up in 15 minutes.
Yeah, and too, is so much has changed. I mean, when you talk about how much easier it is to get a booth put up, and obviously there's been a big technology add. What do you think the biggest challenge is facing consumer shows today?
I'd have to say it's budgets. It's budgets in so many places where, for manufacturers, for example, where their money has to go, even just the small shops, that we're faced with putting money into social media and into websites, and there's still all the traditional print stuff and everything like that. And, margins have gotten tighter, product changes quicker, and then you have to close your stuff out, and get the new stuff. But I think I think it's budgets really. And, I talk to a lot of manufacturers, all the main companies, and, almost all of them say, hey, we want to be at every one of the shows, but we can't be away from the office that long. And it's not the expense of the show, it's the expense of travel and all of that affects whether or not we can attend. And, we got to understand that people do have a budget and they have work to do and they have time that they need to be in the office. So they can't always attend every event as much as they'd even like to. So I think budgets are the big thing. And, a lot of companies had to dump a lot of money into websites and social media and, the tech world to come up to speed. And it's not necessarily that it turns around and gives them a return on their investment. It's just a bit of a necessary evil that they need to do to stay relevant.
And do you think over time that's going to make it, harder and harder for consumer shows to kind of survive in the space? Or do you think there's going to always be a place for the consumer show?
No, it's the exact opposite. And what I was just talking about is the reason. The tech world inundates us with information. I mean, while we're doing this interview, we could be looking up every fly rod that's out there, and within minutes have downloaded all the information, all the specs, know everything about it. But what we don't get is any kind of personal interaction from it. We don't get, and especially in the fly fishing world, we kind of have a personal relationship with our gear. We want to get that rod in her hand and shake it, wind the fly reel a little bit, see the balance of our equipment. If you may pick out a reel that you like and a rod that you like, and then put them together, and you don't like the combo, so you got to switch it around. There's a personal touch to it, as well as all the art side to fly fishing, including the fly tying and things like that. It's great to watch someone in person and say, hey, why did you choose that material for that part of the fly? And they can explain it to you. It's very important in the design of many flies. As a fly designer, I've had people come up to me and be like, hey, I substituted this material in your fly pattern, and I think it looks great. And I'm like, yeah, I tried that before, and here's why it didn't work great. And you can come up, maybe it didn't float as well as the material that you ended up with, or whatever it might be. So there's a lot of personal feel to it. And what happens is a lot of people get inundated with this information through looking it up, through social media, and we're bombarded by it. And then what we want to do is actually just step away from that and talk to someone about the product. So I've seen this change over the last couple of years even, and I've found that most of our customers come up to me and tell me what they want to do is they want to talk to the manufacturers and see who treats them well and see who answers their questions the best. And then that's who they're going to buy from, because, let's face it, if tomorrow we only had one brand of fly rods that existed, there's not going to be too many of us that are going to give up the sport. They're all great. They're all fantastic brands. You might have a favorite flex or something, or a favorite model, but a lot of it is how the company has treated you if you've dealt with them.
Yeah, it's interesting because that's really kind of, what's old is new again. It's all about relationship and interacting with your customers.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what a lot of people want, because not only because of within our sport, but because of work. A lot of people are working and you stare at a computer all day, and they don't want to go stare at the computer to read about their fly rods. They want to go talk to someone about it. They want to hold it and they want to cast it. And, that's where pro shops are good. And that's also, where our shows really shine, because you're able to test everything and talk to everybody. You might talk to the guy that designed the rod. You might talk to the guy that's making the pack that you use. And, and the manufacturer is standing there and he's able to get the feedback from you and say, oh, I love your pack, but I wish the zipper was a little longer, or, I wish instead of a zipper, it was a Velcro or something. And they might hear that enough times that next year's model, that's the upgrade. And that's where they can get direct consumer feedback rather than just, designing it and talking with a couple of pros that might have different needs than the average consumer.
No, it makes a lot of sense. And I think, most people know this by now, but a few years ago, you took over the reins for the fly fishing show from your dad. What was that transition like?
Well, I'd been working for the show basically my whole life and grew up around it. So I knew the ins and outs of it. My dad is notorious for throwing people to the wolves. He's not someone that trains you on something. So, when you want to do some work for him, he says, here's the work, go do it, and let you do it the way that you want to, which can be good and bad. Good if you have some ideas, bad if you need to teach yourself how to do it, and it takes some extra time. So there was a lot of things on the business side of it that I had to learn, and took a lot of work and changes that I was implementing, but the transition went pretty well. He's still around. Like I said, he's never going to go, and he's always available if I have any questions.
Yeah, and what was the biggest surprise or challenge as you kind of worked through that process?
Well, probably the biggest challenge is setting up budgets and redoing things to account for additional jobs and additional things that I put in place, because he was never a tech savvy person. He still prefers to write someone a letter than to send them an email, although he's caved into that necessary evil. And fought a cell phone for a long time. So he was someone that liked to handle things the old-fashioned way and did a great job at it, and people actually appreciate the fact that he did that. But, to bringing the business up to speed, there was a lot of stuff that needed to be put into place, and that was a big challenge to just get everybody reworked and rewired within the whole business.
Got it. And, can you share with us your vision for the fly fishing show and kind of where you want to be in the next 5 years?
Well, the fly fishing show is an event. An event has energy, and I want it to be something that people think of as an event and they get excited for and they don't want to miss it. Something that, the energy builds up before it happens. Everybody wants to be there. It draws in people of every age, sex, color. It doesn't matter. We want to get together and learn and have a great time, because those are the two primary things that I really want to have at the show. Of course, there's things that you can buy and, all kinds of stuff that you can look at, but learning and entertainment are the two priorities for me. That's what I can control. I can't control the product that someone brings in. To a degree, we have an application process, and we really try to keep focused to our core fly fishing theme. And all exhibitors need to meet a fly fishing only catch and release theme. So, we don't mind that, if you eat a fish lunch at a lodge and they talk about that. It's part of it. Some of us, I enjoy catching and eating some fish occasionally, but we want to promote the catch and release theme and, the fly fishing focus. So it's not becoming just a sportsman show. It's about fly fishing, and that's what we want to focus on. So, in 5 years, I'd say what I want to see is, and we've been developing this over the last number of years, you see a lot more families, a lot more youth. I want to get kids started young like I did, because it was an important part to my life. And I think if you ask anybody that started fly fishing at a young age, it influenced them, and it teaches you a lot. I have people tell me all the time, "Oh, I'm not patient enough to fly fish." And I said, well, you don't need to be patient at all. What fly fishing does is teach you how to be patient. In fact, it's way more active than throwing some bait out and waiting for a bite. That you need a lot of patience for that, unless they're biting like crazy. So fly fishing, you're active all the time, and and that's kind of what I want people to realize, and it's much more simple than most people think, but you can make it as complex as you want. And I think that's where it becomes a lifelong challenge to people.
Yeah, it's a little bit like golf. You can really kind of go in a lot of different directions and spend as much time and money drilling into it as you want to.
Yeah, I don't golf, but I can see the similar attraction to people, because you could go out tomorrow and have the best day you've ever had, and then go out the next day and completely flop.
Yep.
And that's what happens with people with golf, and it's the drive to do better that makes people want to continue trying, and the fact that you're never going to really perfect it that keeps you going. And then there's also ways, you can look at it in fly fishing. I always tell people that one of the biggest differences between golf and fly fishing is that we're also learning about our natural environment in the process. There's people that get into entomology, and they may barely fly fish, but they're really into entomology. People can get into casting. They can get into fly tying. There's a lot of different things that you can get into within the sport itself. I'm not that far into golf, but I imagine some people can get really into teaching and, other aspects of it. But, in the bottom line, you're not really learning about the natural environment.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Can you share with us some of the things you've done during your tenure as the CEO of the Fly Fishing Show to put your stamp on the event?
Well, I'd have to say the two biggest things are that I took the show to Atlanta. That was new under my helm. And anytime you go to a new venue, it's a huge challenge. There's a lot more work to the first year than subsequent years, because after you get the first year done, you have a number of things that are a little bit of plug and play. So that was a lot of work. And after that, I actually had a meeting with our team, and I told everybody, I said, okay, we're not going to do any major changes except for every other year. We'll never do two major changes back-to-back years because it's just too much work and it takes away from, other things that we need to focus on. And I think, maybe a week after we had that meeting, I got a call that told me the facility at our largest show, Somerset, New Jersey show, was closing down. So I was forced to move our largest show the following year to Edison. So that was a big challenge and a big move, and we ended up putting on the largest fly fishing show that was ever held.
Yeah, and it's interesting too, because I always ask like guides and folks like that to share, what they think the biggest misconception people have about what they do. What do you think is the biggest misconception people have about the life of a show promoter?
Oh, that's an easy one. Yeah. I get that all the time, and that is people calling me in November and saying, "Hey, you're probably starting to get busy now. I wanted to catch you before it gets hectic," and then people thinking that right after the show ends, I don't do anything until the next November. But like I said earlier, I'm starting on 2021. I've got contracts and stuff in place through 2022. And, we're working ahead. It takes about 2 years to produce every one of our shows that you see. So it's not like we just get busy in November and work for a couple of months. It starts pretty early. And that is definitely the biggest misconception, because people all the time are telling me that, "Hey, I think you're getting busy now, so I wanted to catch you."
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I would say being up at at Bo Beasley's event in Virginia this past weekend, he would probably say that's probably one of his pet peeves too.
Oh yeah, I think it kind of like makes you feel underappreciated. And Bo and I have talked about that before, joke about it.
But what I would say too, Ben, is I think it's a compliment about how well you guys do your job that people think it's that effortless, right?
Oh, thanks.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully by the time we're at a show, we're just running around putting out fires. All the planning should be done. Things are in place, and the earlier you get it done, the easier it is to solve the problems, because you've kind of got a chance to know what to expect, and over the years, you see the same kind of problems or the same questions, so you already have an answer, and sometimes people are completely flat out surprised when they present you with a problem and you give them such a solid answer, and they're like, "Well, I didn't even think you were going to be able to answer that," and they're surprised and like, "Oh no, I've seen that 20 times. It's no problem."
And I can't even remember. It's been so long that I've been going to your shows, but for folks that haven't been before, can you kind of give us an idea what the general format of a fly fishing show event looks like?
Well, at our shows, we have featured seminars, destination theater, featured tires. We have casting ponds with casting demonstrations. Then there's the vendor floor with exhibitors that range from outfitters, local guides, international outfitters, booking agents, manufacturers, people starting new businesses with little trinkets, accessories, fly line manufacturers, anything that you can imagine there on the show floor. So you can go to shop, but like I said, the real thing you want to go for is entertainment and education. And if you go there for that purpose, you'll have a good time. I think the biggest advice that I could give anybody coming into the show is to plan ahead. Look at our website, flyfishingshow.com, or under the venues that you may go to. Look at the seminars, highlight some stuff, bring a notebook. The people that I'm most impressed with at the show, they come in with a list of things that they want to see and want to do and want to buy. Of course, you might be surprised and find some things that you didn't expect. And they also have a whole schedule on their itinerary of what presentations they want to see. And when they're there, they're taking notes, because there is so much to learn that there's no way that you can remember it all. You'll forget some of the things that you learn while you're there before you walk out the door, because you've hit like overload.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know one thing that you guys pride yourself on is, there's kind of a general fly fishing knowledge, but you always customize the shows to their location. And we're going to release this interview a little bit before the Atlanta show. Can you let folks know what you have specifically in mind for the folks down in Georgia?
Well, yeah, every show is a little bit different. And there's obviously the local flair that's there. We have local celebrities, but all of our shows, we have international celebrities there speaking and people talking about general stuff. I mean, the physics of a cast are the physics of a cast, and so someone may be talking about casting technique that is universal, but you could be talking about fishing the Chattahoochee River at the Atlanta show, and that's going to be a major draw, where if someone did a talk on the Chattahoochee River in New Jersey, or might be in one of our smaller rooms, and that is something that could be at both shows, but it's a major draw at the Atlanta show. And of course, the folks in Atlanta, I feel like they don't even know how fortunate they are in how much fishing they have right there. I mean, you could be trout fishing right in downtown Atlanta. You could fish for bass. You can fish for stripers, landlocked stripers. You can run to the East Coast. You can run to the Gulf. You can be down in the Keys pretty easy. You could be fishing for anything from blue water to mountain trout streams to flats for tarpon within a couple hours drive. And so they're pretty lucky right there to have a lot of that. Plus it's a major hub for travel.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, you started out 2020, you always kick off the season in Denver, and you're getting ready to head to Marlboro tomorrow. You want to let us know the rest of the shows for the season really quickly?
Yeah, well, after Marlboro starts this weekend. The show opens on the 17th of January. It goes 17th, 18th, and 19th. And then we go down to Edison, New Jersey for the 24th, 25th, and 26th. That's our largest event and the largest in the world, largest fly fishing event in the world. Atlanta, we have a Friday, Saturday event, and that is the 31st of January and February 1st. Then we have a weekend off, and we go to the West Coast for Lynnwood, Washington, which is in the Seattle area, on February 15th and 16th. And then we go down to California, to the Bay Area for Pleasanton, California, the 21st, 22nd, and 23rd of February. And we wrap things up on the 7th and 8th, in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, to finish up the season.
Fantastic. And if folks want to find out more about the Fly Fishing Show and buy advance tickets, where should they go on the internet?
Flyfishingshow.com is our website, and there's links for tickets on there. Each show has its own page with all of the information for each event. I would tell people, as I said before, to plan in advance. I can tell you I talk to tons of people every year. We get about 33% new customers across the board every year. We also have about 33% that never miss a show. So those are the numbers that I'm most proud of, which means we're maintaining customers and we're drawing in new customers. And everybody in between are people that just, come as much as they can. They try to make it, but they might have conflicts one year. And so, they continue to attend them, but bringing in those new people, what I find the first year that a ton of people come in for 2-3 hours and they walk in the door and they're immediately overwhelmed because there's 24 talks going on at a time, depending on the venue. And they wanted to see 3 of them and they're all at the same time, and they may be able to see them at different times on different days. They may be able to see different things if they had more time, but what they come in is they're overwhelmed. They basically walk out and they come back the next year and they tell me that they came in like that and they said, I'm coming back the next year and I'm coming for the whole weekend or at least the whole day, because that is the way that you're going to enjoy it the best. Of course, if all you can do is make it for a couple of hours, that's great. Just plan what you want to do, because if you walk in the door, you'll be overwhelmed. But ultimately, the best thing that you can do is plan to go for the day or the weekend. And, we have on our website, there's information for hotels that we have block discounted rates. That's open to the general public as well as the exhibitors. And, we have a lot of people that just come and stay for the weekend. And it's a blast because you're just hanging out at the hotel. You may be at the bar in the hotel and find out you're sitting next to, one of your fly fishing heroes, and you just start talking to him and you don't even realize it's him because, they don't know what Marvin looks like.
Yeah, no, I can remember buying Joe Humphreys a hamburger many years ago in Winston-Salem, and it's pretty cool. And it's one of the neatest things for the event, particularly if you're you go every single year.
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Joe's always hanging out. He loves the public, so he's someone that's always hanging out. If he's at the show, he's probably hanging out in the hotel lobby just talking to people.
Yeah, absolutely. And before I let you go tonight, when you retire from being the CEO of the Fly Fishing Show, what do you hope you have accomplished, and how do you want to be remembered in the sport?
Well, I just like people to remember my contribution as far as exposing the sport to more people and creating a venue where education is foremost. Yeah, I want to make sure that, I bring in new people to the sport and inspire them. You had asked about some of the big things that I've done since I took over the helm, and obviously the moving a venue and putting on the largest show ever held, and going to Atlanta, expanding our list are major things. But some of the smaller things that I've done is, we've added a scouting merit badge program where kids can come in uniform. They get to come in for free if they're in uniform. They get to work towards their merit badge. And, the goal with that is, in talking with the fishing committee and the scouts, we don't really even care if they come in and earn a merit badge. We almost prefer that they come in and get so sidetracked and so excited that they want to be a lifelong fly fisherman rather than just doing a merit badge at the next club meeting and then the next thing they're doing is bowling or something. They're just doing it for badges, but we want them to do it to become a lifelong member in the sport. And I'd like to retire having known that I introduced the sport to a new generation and also educated them about our environment and the needs. And we have a lot of nonprofits that are at our shows teaching people about, the environmental concerns or whatever it might be that challenges our sport.
Fantastic. And what's the best way for folks to keep track of the Fly Fishing Show or to follow you on social media?
We're on Instagram at the Fly Fishing Show, and we have a Facebook page for the Fly Fishing Show itself. And there's links to all of our social media on our website as well. If you scroll down to the bottom of our homepage or any of the pages, really, at the bottom there'll be links to our social media, so you can find that. And the website is flyfishingshow.com.
Awesome, and I'll drop all of that in the show notes. Well, I super appreciate it, Ben, that you carved out this time in probably the craziest time of the year for you, and I wish you all the luck in all of your future shows.
Well, thanks a lot. I hope to see you there.
Yep, I'll see you in Edison, and I'll see you in Atlanta.
Awesome. Look me up.
Will do.
Thanks a lot.
Well, folks, I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Thanks again to our sponsor, our friends at Norvise. They're racking up the miles this show season. To see firsthand the only vice that truly spins, check out their show schedule at www.nor-vice.com. Folks, thanks for listening. Without you, there wouldn't be a podcast. Please subscribe in the podcatcher of your choice or check out our mobile apps, and please leave us a review in iTunes. Tight lines, everybody.